In this week's video, we're gonna make this awesome vanity out of a couple of live edge slabs. One of them is 10 feet long and one of them is a weird kind of cutoff. Stick around to the end of the video where I break down how much money it costs to build this slab and how much money we're putting towards debt. Well, I was gonna process this slab here, but realized my lathe was in the way, so then I had to move it. Okay, this 10-foot cherry slab is going to be cross-cut into 4 different sections. That's 2 sides of the vanity and 2 shelves of the vanity. And just a quick fun fact about cherry. When eating Ben & Jerry's ice cream, I prefer Cherry Garcia. So what you see me doing here is the cut that I made is not exactly going parallel with the way that the sapwood is going. So to get the grain going the direction I want to go, I needed to cut this little pie shaped piece out of the slab so that when I pull my tape measure, I make a straight cut from that other cut side. I know this is hard to understand, but I think you'll get the picture when you see this next cross cut. When breaking down slabs like this, you always want to cut your longer pieces first, then your shorter pieces, and that's what I'm doing here. The shorter pieces are going to be my shelves, so I'm actually cutting the shelves now, and you'll see this cut here in just a second. I'm just measuring to see if the line is what I would consider perpendicular to the grain, and then we'll go ahead and make the cut. I had to move the sawhorse so that I didn't cut into my sawhorse. After we make this cut, all the pieces for the lower half of the vanity will be completed. 2 shelves, 2 sides, and the top. In this particular video, we're not going to go over how to mix epoxy, so I'm just going to go ahead and mix this stuff up. If you want to, I have plenty of videos on my channel about how to mix and pour the epoxy. Here we're using super clear, their deep pour epoxy, and I'll link this down in the description below so you can get the same stuff. And we're just going to go ahead and mix up about 24 ounces. I end up doing 2 pours with this one. This pour is 24 ounces, and I did a second pour of about 12 ounces for a total of 36 ounces to fill this void here. Now when you're mixing epoxy, make sure you continue to scrape the sides and the bottom the entire time to mix up all the epoxy. Or asked me to match the epoxy to this drain cover, and we're going to do our best to try to match it. I have some copper pigment here that we're going to mix in, and then I have some alcohol inks to mix in with the copper pigment to try to get that exact color. And as you watch, you'll notice that I start getting a little bit irritated because I cannot get this color right at first. And as you can tell, that copper color is not the same color as the copper in that drain cover. So I took some purple. It looks more purple to me, so I added just a little bit of purple, and I'm going to mix this up. And it didn't do anything when I mixed it. It stayed the exact same color. So I thought to myself, let's add a little bit more purple. Mix that up. And it still didn't seem to change the color very much. So I'm thinking to myself, how about add a little bit of black pigment to it, metallic powder. I quickly noticed, nope, that's not what I wanted to do at all. So then I grabbed some red pigment, added that in there. It did absolutely nothing. But I thought to myself, the piece looks a little bit more purple. So maybe I'll try a little bit more purple. No, that didn't really do anything at all. As you can tell, it's not really changing the color at all. So let's add a lot more purple because it looks more purple. Mix it some more. Nope, it's not getting purple at all. Look, not the same. It's not the same color. And I just cannot figure it out. So I decided, let's put a lot of red in there. Mix it up, and guess what? Not the same color. So how about all of the red this time? Mix that up. And still not the color I want. So how about even more red? Thought I did all of it the first time, but I guess I didn't. So even more red. And it is not going the way that I want it to go. No, I guess I'm not going to use purple even though I wanted to. And then I had an idea. Let's try bright pink. Guess what? It actually started to change the color when I used bright pink. So I did a little bit more. And just a little bit more. And you'll see here in just a second that it actually started to match. Crazy. So we added a little bit more pink. And go figure, pink was the color that I needed. I would say this is probably one of my favorite parts when you pour the epoxy, but it's also the most nerve-wracking because you gotta sit there and watch it and make sure you don't have any leaks. I would say the ratio to having leaks and not having leaks is 50-50, even though I've been doing this for several years. Guess what? Found a small leak, so I used a clamp and just clamped it down, and it stopped it. Which sometimes that doesn't work, and sometimes it does. And now just a little bit of ASMR for you. Just a little piece of tape holding that one on. This is why I use 100% silicone to seal up the forms, because it releases really well after everything is hardened up. As far as a pour goes, this actually went really well without any hiccups, and everything released off the back of this slab really well without any hiccups. So I'm quite pleased with this particular pour. When it comes to putting all of these slabs of wood into a planer, after you've poured epoxy, you want to get all of this silicone off of it so it doesn't damage your planer blades or get gummed up in those planer blades. And here, my planer is only 25 inches wide, or it'll only cut 25 inches wide, and so I need to rip down this slab a little bit. It was a little bit too wide to fit through the planer. But before I could do that, I had to cross cut so that I had a straight edge to pull my tape from. And then I could get the correct angle to cut the back side of that slab where it was going to go against the wall in the vanity. So that's what I'm doing here, marking where I'm going to cut this straight line. And then I always forget what measurements I need, so sometimes you just got to write it right on the face of the board. And this really helps me. So we'll just check the measurements again, make some more marks, and you only get one chance to cut this stuff. So measure twice, cut once. That's the best philosophy. So we're going to rip this off the side and then get it to the planer. I know it looks arbitrary what I'm doing here with the square up against the rail for my saw, but what I'm trying to do is I just want to keep a consistent measurement of 22 inches or whatever it was away from the edge, because live edge is so variable. I just wanted to make sure she had as much countertop space as possible for her vanity. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so I just ripped this and it fell right here, but because I didn't press the record button, you didn't get to see it. Let's try this again, shall we? Hopefully you guys get to see it this time. Did you get it? Cool. Okay, I don't know if you can see this. There's a little ridge right here from where the epoxy there's like a little spot where the epoxy lifted up a little bit when it was curing. Not really lifted up, it was just a gap there. And we're gonna run this through the planer, but I like to take an angle grinder with a 80 grit flap disc and just work this down a little bit till it's more flush here so I don't have to do as many passes on the planer. And it saves the blades a little bit too. So we're gonna, grind that down. And it goes really quick with this. And then we'll take it over to the planer. I was gonna say something like, I'm surprised I have to tell people this about wearing a mask when you're sanding epoxy or anything like that with all the dust flying around, but go figure, I forget this half the time that I'm doing this stuff. My father-in-law and my wife remind me all the time. So wear a mask so that way you don't damage your lungs, so that way you can do woodworking and epoxy work for longer. When you pour your epoxy, try to overfill it. That way you don't have so much to plane down when you're putting your slabs through the planer. If you notice, this didn't take too many passes before the slab was finished. Okay, so now that it's out of the planer, I'm gonna go ahead and work it through the grits from 80 grit sanding up to 220. But I did want to show you something pretty cool. I don't know if you've ever used this before. I am not sponsored by this, but 3M Extract. This stuff is awesome. The Cubitron. I've been using this, nothing but this recently, and it works really great. Like I said, not sponsored. It just saves me a lot of time. And it's actually, it seems like it's expensive, but when you use less paper or sanding pads, it's actually pretty affordable. I really like it. I'll leave a link of the materials down in the description. While I'm sanding here, there's just a little spot that was a little low. So you'll see me kind of work that spot out there in just a second. If you're wondering why I'm going back and forth so much, and you can kind of see it if you look closely in the center of the top. This is 80 grit that I'm using, and I work my way from 80 to 150 to 220. That's typically what I do. You can do the other grits in between there, like 120 or 180, but with this Cubitron stuff, it just works really well. You don't have to do that all the time. So I went ahead and back taped where these checks come through. So that way we can fill, we'll put a little bit more tape right here, but I wanted to get to this one as well. Put a little tape right here. We're gonna fill these. And I used to fill these with CA glue, which I still do if they're like a hairline check or maybe something like that. I still use CA glue, But for these bigger ones, I've really been using this Total Boat UV Cure resin, and this stuff is awesome because it's one part, you don't mix anything. You just put it into the crevice and then you use a UV light to, cure the epoxy, and you can cure it in just a couple minutes, which is really nice. Saves a lot of time and it's pretty legit. So it's awesome. A little bit tacky still, but didn't come off on my finger. Sometimes I even let this stuff like sit out in the sun. And that really works pretty well. Okay, now that we epoxied those checks, we're going to clean up the edges of the shelving so that way we can make a straight cut for the back of the shelves that go flat against the wall. I really like using a draw knife, makes easy work of that bark, and then my 80 grit flap sander right after I knock the big chunks of bark off. Alright, so as you can see, I got my square lined up, and I got my track lined up with the square. I have a mark there. I'll go ahead and make another mark there just in case it comes off. And we'll go ahead and make this cut. I'm going to use good old pocket hole screws to attach these shelves. But I was kind of maxing out my pocket hole jig because it's not meant to really go 2 inches thick. So you'll see that here. And then I also had my 5-year-old son holding the camera for me, so don't go too hard on him. I'm just kidding. He did a fantastic job. Actually better than the time I asked my mom to hold the camera for me and get a video of somebody's reaction when getting their charcuterie board, where she watched through the camera lens but never hit the record button. So we wipe off all the glue, right? So that we don't leave any residue, right?
Yes. Some glue on the side.
Good eye. You want to record that?
Yeah.
And we got some glue on the top too. Wipe that off. Yep. Good job recording, dude.
You're welcome.
Cool. All right, so we got it all put together, except for the top. Top is still drying, but we got the bottom 2 shelves put in, and obviously this top shelf is a little bit shallower to allow plumbing to come up. We still may have to notch it a little bit here, but for the water valves and things back here, it'd be nice. And I'll probably fill this crack right here before the top goes on, obviously. And this shelf is just, in case we do have to notch it, it's just hasn't been glued yet. I can just unscrew a couple screws. So I'll fill this with epoxy before the top goes on, and it'll all be nice. I have some UV epoxy that we can use for this, and it'll fill it up and be quick. We don't have to wait super long time. When we cut the slab, this was a piece of drop that fell off. So we're gonna use this drop, and I'm gonna make the backsplash for the vanity top out of that. But if you notice, it's a chainsaw cut right here, which isn't really live edge. So I have this other piece of drop with this live edge here. I'm gonna lay this on top, trace it, and try to make it work. All right, so I have my board laid on top of this board, and I'm just gonna trace this. Now we have our line traced. I'm gonna take my angle grinder and shape this to kind of match that. And guess what? We're getting rid of this. I'll carve that down a little bit so you don't have a chainsaw cut going right through it. Here I set my jigsaw to have the same angle as the live edge so that I'm cutting it at an angle. I didn't really show you that part of this. So look, yep, got some pretty cool looking live edge there. It's not real live edge, but we'll faux it, make it look good. All right, and we have some live edge. There we have it. Oops, bumped the camera. We'll put some epoxy up in here and then fix up the back a little bit, get all these little stragglers off there, and sand and finish. If you watch my channel in the past, you'll know that I always go Rubio Monocoat, but I did see this company on Amazon and it looks just like Rubio, and it works the same exact way. But I figured I'd give them a chance since it was like a little no-name brand. At least I had never seen it before, and it actually came out really, really nice. So I think I might stick with this for a little longer. Tell me what you think. So here I'm using a non-abrasive white Scotch-Brite pad to apply the oil, and then we're going to let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes before we buff it off. And I have an old t-shirt cut up into some squares that I'm using to buff it off, and then just buff it until no more oil comes off onto the rag. The big problem is that it kind of looks a little splotchy on the first coat. Now I know it's supposed to only be one coat, but I've noticed if I do one coat, let it set up overnight, come back with a red Scotch-Brite or maroon Scotch-Brite pad and scuff it up the next day and add a second coat, it actually looks much, much better. So that's what I did here, and you can see a little bit how splotchy it is here. So here I am with the maroon Scotch-Brite pad, going back and forth and scuffing it up. And what you're looking for is not really sanding, but more of just having a nice satin or matte sheen across the entire surface. And then I'll go ahead and add my second coat, which actually takes just a little bit less oil because it's not soaking into the top as much as the first coat. But it's the exact same process as the first coat. Spread it on evenly. Use the white Scotch-Brite pad to buff it in. Let it sit and then buff it off. We got the Blacktail Studio nano coating, hard coat, and the top coat. We're going to apply this per the specs, and we'll do the first coat now, and then tomorrow we'll do the second coat. Let's do that. So this first coat is called the hard coat, and you can actually do a couple of different layers of this first hard coat, which is what Cam from Blacktail Studios does. So I did a couple of these. I'm not going to show every single coat that I do of the hard coat, but it's the same exact process every single time that you apply it. You apply it on in a pattern like this, back and forth, and then you let it sit for 1 minute before you use the 45-degree angle on the sponge to then buff it one more time, and then let it sit for an hour before you apply the second coat. Then the process is the exact same for the top coat as well as the hard coat, what I just applied. So you just follow that same process over and over until you build as many coats as you want, ending with that top coat. Now we're going to wait 1 minute. Okay, so that was about a minute. We're gonna wait about, I can't remember what the thing says, a certain number of time. I think it's like an hour. I can come back and I can put a second coat on. Scratch that. I gotta wait another minute, and I'm gonna take that cloth and I'm gonna buff off that, what's the residue or the leftovers here that's got too much on it. Go ahead and buff that off. Then I'll come back in an hour. And pretty much it's the same thing for the other coats and the top coat as well. All right, we're about to segue into having this thing installed in the customer's home. Come check this. That Vanity came out sweet, didn't it? So I told you that I would break down the cost and what we're able to put towards debt. So this Vanity cost a total of about $750 in materials, and we profited about $500 on this job. So when we take that $500, we're gonna apply it to one of our pieces of debt, which is our lowest one first, and this will actually pay off about half of the debt of that first piece of debt. Now I think the total we have on that is about $1,200, so it's almost half of that. And then we have one other project going out that will pay for the other half, and then that first piece of debt will be out of here. So thank you for watching this video, guys, and right here I actually have a couple of bloopers, so if you stick around just for a few more minutes, check out some bloopers, and then I will catch you on the next one. Remember, if you need me, I'll call you. Catch you later, guys.
Dot. It sounded like a fart.
Sometimes it gets annoying trying to remember to push all the buttons and stuff, you know?